Okay, I want to start today with a concept from physics. It's called the fine-tuning problem. Have you ever heard of this?
I have, yeah. It's the idea that the universe is sort of balanced on a knife edge, right?
Exactly. The whole premise is that if the force of gravity was just a tiny, tiny bit stronger or weaker, or if the strong nuclear force changed by even a fraction of a percent,
Hmm.
the entire universe wouldn't just be different. It wouldn't exist. Atoms wouldn't hold together. Stars wouldn't ignite.
You just have this cold, dark, chaotic soup.
Well,
It's one of those things that keeps scientists up at night.
it is. Because statistically, we shouldn't even be here.
Right.
And usually science looks for a theory of everything to explain that balance, some mathematical formula that ties it all together. But today we're looking at a stack of sources that claim the answer isn't a formula at all.
It's a person,
It's a person.
which is a massive claim. I
Yeah,
mean, you're moving from physics to metaphysics pretty quickly there.
we are. We are doing a deep dive into the book of Colossians, specifically chapter 1. And to help us unpack this, we've got a really interesting mix of
Yeah, I was
sources.
looking through them. We've got some dense Greek linguistic analysis, some historical context.
Right, on the Roman Empire. And then we have some really fascinating commentary from Ellen G. White that sort of pulls back the curtain on what she calls the great controversy.
And there's some real-world stories in here, too, which I think helps to ground all this. Because the mission today is to figure out how a single person can be described as the glue of the cosmos.
Right, because the text we're looking at doesn't just say Jesus is a good teacher.
No, it's not even just Son of God in that basic Sunday school class way.
No, it goes way bigger than that.
It makes a cosmic argument. It calls him the creator, the sustainer, and the reconciler of all reality.
Which sounds beautiful, poetically. I think we can all agree it's sublime language. But when you actually dig into it,
Which is what we do here.
exactly, you hit some serious logical paradoxes. I mean, the text calls him firstborn, which
Mhm.
which implies he had a beginning, right? But then it says he created everything. It calls him the image of God, but implies he is God.
It can be incredibly confusing if you just skim the surface.
It is, and honestly, for a long time, I just glossed over those words: firstborn, image, head. They just sounded like nice titles, but today I really want to press on them.
Good.
If Jesus is the firstborn, does that mean he was created? If he's the image, is he just a reflection?
Those are the pivotal questions because Paul, the guy writing this letter, he isn't just throwing around compliments to make Jesus sound cool. He is building a very specific um, legal and ontological argument about who is currently running the universe.
Ontological. Okay, there's our first $10 word of the day.
It just means dealing with the nature of being. Who exists and how do they exist?
All right, so let's look at the nature of this existence. Let's start with that first piece of the puzzle, the image. The source material calls God the invisible God, which logically I get. You can't see the Father, but then it introduces Jesus as the image of the invisible God.
Right. And in modern English, when we hear image, we usually think of a reduction.
Like a photograph.
Exactly. If I show you a photo of myself or if you look at yourself in a mirror, what are you seeing?
I'm seeing a reflection, a copy.
And it's flat. It's two-dimensional. It lacks the depth, the life, the breathing reality of the original. It's a lower resolution representation.
You try to have a conversation with a picture, you're not going to get very far.
You're not. So is that what Paul means? That Jesus is like a snapshot of God, a really good copy?
It sounds like it, but the notes say no.
No, and this is where the Greek analysis in our notes do some heavy lifting. The word used here is icon,
Where we get the word icon.
right? But in the first century context, it meant something much more robust than, say, a JPEG file or a statue. It implies an exact imprint or a manifestation.
The notes mentioned Hebrews 1.3, calling him the express image.
Yes. Think of it less like a photograph and more like a translation.
A translation? How so?
Well, if you have a complex thought in your head, that thought is invisible to me. I can't see it. I can't touch it. It's locked inside your mind.
Right.
But the moment you speak, that thought becomes audible. It enters the physical world. It takes on a form that I can actually interact with and understand.
So Jesus is God's thought made audible.
That's a beautiful way to put it. The source material really emphasizes that because of sin, humanity has this profound disconnect from the Creator. We literally cannot survive a direct encounter with the Father's glory.
It would be like standing on the surface of the sun.
We'd be consumed. So we need an interface. We need a way to know God's character, his personality, his humor, his mercy, without being destroyed by his raw power.
And that's the function of the icon.
That's it. Jesus didn't just come to tell us facts about God. He came to show us, in high definition, exactly who the Father is.
There's that quote in the notes, "He who has seen me has seen the Father." I've always found that so bold.
It is
He's not saying I'm like him. He's saying I am the visible version of him.
precisely. And that answers that first paradox.
Yep.
He isn't a copy or some lesser being. He is the translation of the infinite into the finite so that we can actually have a relationship with him.
Okay, that handles the image.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have to tackle the one that I think trips people up the most. And honestly, it sounds like a flat-out contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
The text calls Jesus the firstborn over all creation.
The prototokos.
Right. Now, in plain English, firstborn means the first baby born in a family. My older brother is the firstborn. He existed before me. So if Jesus is the firstborn of creation, doesn't that mean he was the first thing God created?
If you only look at the English word in isolation, you could absolutely come to that conclusion. And many groups throughout history have.
The Arians, right, in the 4th century.
Yep, they argued exactly that Jesus is a created being, just the oldest and most powerful one.
But our sources are pushing back hard on that.
They are, and they're doing it by looking at the context. You can't just pluck a word out. You have to look at the whole sentence. Look at what Paul writes, literally one verse later.
He says, by him all things were created.
All things, visible, invisible, thrones, dominions. Paul leaves nothing out. Now, just use basic logic here.
If Jesus created all things...
Can he be a created thing himself?
No. You can't create yourself. That's
Yeah.
a logical impossibility.
Exactly. So Paul creates a category problem. He puts Jesus in the creator box, not the created box, which leaves us with a linguistic puzzle. Why use the word firstborn if you don't mean born first?
And this is where the notes bring up King David. I had not made this connection before, but it's really, really helpful.
It's the perfect precedent. In Psalm 89, God is speaking about David, and he says, I will make him my firstborn, the highest of the kings of the earth.
But historically, David wasn't the firstborn.
Not even close.
He's the baby of the family. He had, 7 older brothers. His dad didn't even bother bringing him in from the field when the prophet Samuel showed up.
He was so far down the totem pole. Chronologically, he was last. But functionally, legally, he was the firstborn.
So it's a title?
It was a title of rank.
Mm-hmm.
In the ancient Near East, the term meant the heir, the one who has the authority over the entire estate.
So when Paul calls Jesus firstborn, he's not talking about a timeline. He's talking about an org chart.
He's asserting status. He is saying that Jesus possesses the rights of the heir to the entire cosmos. It's about preeminence. It's about authority, not biology.
Okay, that clears it up. It's a title, not a birth date. But this leads us right back to the cosmic glue idea we started with.
Mm-hmm.
Because having the title of boss is one thing, actually running the factory is another. And the text makes this wild claim in Colossians 1:17.
In him, all things consist,
The Greek word is synestomy.
which means to stand together, to cohere, or to be held together.
So the notes break this down into physics again. It's suggesting Jesus isn't some absentee landlord who just wound up the clock of the universe and then went on vacation.
No, that's deism, the idea of a distant God. This text presents a theism that is incredibly active. Think about the atom again. You have protons packed into the nucleus.
Okay.
Protons have a positive charge. What happens when you put two positive magnets together?
They repel. They push apart violently.
So by all the laws of electricity, the nucleus of every atom in your body should fly apart instantly. The force that stops that, we call it the strong nuclear force. It's the glue of reality.
And Paul is identifying that force as a person.
He is saying that the active will of Christ is the stabilizing energy of the universe. That if he withdrew his attention for even a microsecond, reality would just dissolve into chaos.
Yeah.
He is the sustainer.
And this is where our stack of notes takes a turn into something a bit darker, but fascinating. We have these writings from Ellen G. White about the Great Controversy.
Right.
She basically sets the scene for why this issue of who runs the universe is even up for debate in the first place.
Because clearly someone challenged it. If everyone agreed Jesus was the preeminent one, Paul wouldn't even need to write this letter.
The notes describe Lucifer, and they don't describe him as, a monster with horns, at least not at first.
No, quite the opposite. He's described as the pinnacle of created beauty. The text mentions a high and broad forehead.
Which is old school literary code for a massive intellect.
Exactly. Perfect form, noble bearing. He was the covering cherub, standing right in the presence of God.
The notes say he was next in honor to Christ, so number 3 in the entire universe. That's a pretty good gig.
But he wasn't satisfied with number 3.
And this is where the nuance of firstborn versus created becomes life or death.
Hmm.
The notes describe this gradual shift in Lucifer. He began to envy Christ, but specifically, he envied Christ's authority.
There's a dramatic scene described where the Father assembles the entire heavenly host. He presents the Son as equal with himself and invests him with the command of the hosts, specifically regarding the creation of earth.
And Lucifer felt overlooked. He felt like he should have been consulted. Why him and not me?
He wanted into the inner circle of the Godhead. But here's the tragedy of it. And this connects right back to our physics discussion.
Okay.
Lucifer wanted the position, but he ignored the nature.
What do you mean by nature?
Lucifer was a created being.
Yeah.
He was part of the system that needed the glue to hold it together. Christ is the glue.
Oh.
Lucifer wanted to command the universe, but he lacked the ontological power to sustain it. He wanted the status of God without the substance of God.
Wow. That's a powerful distinction. It's like a battery trying to be the power plant.
Yes.
The battery can hold a charge, but it can't generate the electricity.
Exactly. And that envy, that refusal to accept his own creatureliness compared to Christ's creatorship, is what sparked the rebellion. It wasn't just a political disagreement, it was a denial of reality.
It totally changes how you read Colossians. When Paul writes, "He is before all things, and in him all things hold together," he's not just stating a fact.
He's refuting the original lie.
He's reminding the universe there's only one person who keeps us from disintegrating, and it's not Lucifer.
It sets the stakes incredibly high. This isn't just about who sits on which throne. It's about who keeps existence from completely unraveling.
So we've established Jesus as the cosmic glue and the rightful king. But then Paul, he shifts metaphors completely. He zooms in from the galaxy to the local level. He starts talking about a body.
The head of the body, the church.
Now, usually when I hear head, I think CEO, the head of the department. It's a position of leadership.
That's how we use it in corporate speak, sure. But the Greek metaphor here is biological, not organizational.
The notes pose a pretty graphic question to illustrate this.
They do. They ask, if you had to choose between losing a limb, an arm, or a leg, or losing your head, which would you choose?
I mean, that's not really a choice. You can live without an arm. It would be hard, but you'd survive. You can't live without a head.
That's the point. In a physical body, the head isn't just the boss telling the hand what to do. The head is the source of life.
It provides the neural signals, the nourishment.
The coordination, everything. If you sever the connection between the head and the body doesn't just become unemployed. It dies immediately.
So the church isn't a club that Jesus is the president of.
No, it's a living organism that is totally, vitally dependent on him for its very existence. Without the head, the body is just a corpse.
And Paul links this idea of the head to another title, the beginning, and the notes connect this specifically to the resurrection.
Calling him the firstborn from the dead.
And there's that word firstborn, again, meaning preeminent.
Right.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate again, just like with the created thing. Jesus wasn't the first person to come back from the dead.
True.
Elijah raised the widow's son. Jesus raised Lazarus. So chronologically, Lazarus came back before Jesus did.
But think about Lazarus for a second. Who raised Lazarus?
Jesus did.
And what happened to Lazarus eventually?
Well, I assume he died again.
Exactly. Lazarus was resuscitated. He was given a temporary extension on his lease. But Jesus, his resurrection was different. He didn't just come back. He broke the mechanism of death itself.
Ah.
He is the source of resurrection power.
So Lazarus drank from the stream, but Jesus is the spring.
Yes, he is the initiator. Without his resurrection, the grave is a permanent dead end for everyone else. That's why he is the firstborn from the dead. He holds the keys.
Which brings us to the problem we're all living in. We have this glorious creator, the sustainer, this head, but the world is a mess. We are broken. The universe feels like it's cracking. We need fixing.
We need reconciliation.
And this is where the theology really hits the ground. The source material uses a story here that I think captures the emotion of this perfectly. The story of the birdcage.
I love this story. It's a bit old-timey, but the image really sticks with you.
It does. It's a simple parable. A pastor is walking through town, sees a young boy with a rusty, dirty cage, and inside are these little field birds.
Just terrified, beating their wings against the bars, feathers flying everywhere. Miserable.
And the pastor asks the obvious question, what are you going to do with them?
And the boy just grins and says, I'm going to play with them.
Yeah.
I'm going to tease them, and when I get bored, I'm going to feed them to my cat.
That is dark. It's cruel.
It is. It's malicious. The pastor feels this sudden wave of compassion. He asks, "How much for the birds?"
And the boy laughs at him.
Right. He says, "Mister, you don't want these. They aren't canaries. They can't sing. They're just ugly wild field birds."
He's saying they have no value.
Exactly.
Ugh.
But the pastor insists. The boy says $2, which in the context of the story was a sacrifice. The pastor pays it. He takes the cage behind the church
And opens the door.
and lets them fly free.
The application is pretty obvious, but walk us through it.
We are the birds. That's the reality of the human condition. We're trapped in a cage of sin and death. And there's an adversary like the boy who claims we are worthless, who plans to destroy us.
And the notes say, Christ had to purchase our freedom with his own life. He paid the price for the cage.
But here is where the deep dive aspect comes in. The text says he reconciled all things to himself. The Greek word there is cosmos.
Wait, so it's not just about saving humans.
It's bigger than that. Remember the rebellion we talked about? Remember the accusations Lucifer made against God's character, that God was unfair, a tyrant?
Right, the great controversy.
When Jesus, the creator, the glue, the head, allowed himself to be nailed to a cross by his own creation, something happened in the cosmos. The notes describe the unfallen universe, the angels and beings who didn't rebel, watching this happen.
They were watching the sustainer die.
Can you imagine the shock? The notes say they were filled with grief and amazement. They saw the true cost of Lucifer's rebellion, and they saw the absolute depth of God's love.
So that act didn't just save us.
It vindicated God's character across the entire universe. It secured the peace of the cosmos forever.
It proves that his preeminence isn't based on force. It's based on self-sacrifice.
Exactly. Lucifer wanted to rule by power. Jesus rules by love. And that is why he is preeminent. Not just because he's strong enough to hold atoms together, but because he was humble enough to die for them.
That is beautiful. But I have to bring us back to reality for a second, because most of us aren't dealing with cosmic rebellions or watching galaxies form.
Fair question.
We're dealing with rent and jobs and difficult bosses. What does this preeminence look like on a Tuesday?
It's easy to sing Jesus is Lord in church. It's a lot harder to live it when your livelihood is on the line. And the mission notes have a story that I think perfectly illustrates the cost of making Jesus the head.
The story of Renee.
Right. Renee was a fisherman in the Philippines. A guy named Rodel, a missionary, studies the Bible with him. Renee accepts Christ. He decides he wants to better himself, so he goes back to school.
And this isn't a small thing. Rodel helps support him. Renee works hard. He eventually graduates with an accounting degree and lands a corporate job.
This is the success story, right?
Yeah.
Follow Jesus, get a degree, get a good job.
That's the prosperity gospel version. I did the right thing, so pay me.
But that's not what happened.
No. Renee runs into a conflict. He reads in the Bible about the Sabbath taking that 24-hour period to rest and worship. But his firm requires him to work on Friday nights.
So he has a choice. The head says rest, the boss says work.
And Renee chooses the head. He refuses to work, and he gets fired.
Ouch.
So he did the right thing, and his life got worse.
Initially, yes. He's unemployed, he's broke. He's claiming this promise that God has a plan, but the plan looks terrible from where he's standing.
And then it happens again. A hospital offers him a job.
Perfect. A hospital. They heal people. Good karma. Surely this is the blessing.
But there's a catch.
There's a catch. To be a regular employee, he has to be baptized into their specific denomination. Now, Renee needs this money. It's a simple box to check. Just switch labels.
But he refused.
He refused. He chose his conviction over the paycheck.
That is what preeminence looks like. It's not just a feeling. It's letting Jesus call the shots even when it hurts.
It means acknowledging that he is the head of your life, which means he directs the body, even if the direction is into a storm.
But the story doesn't end there.
No. Renee eventually became the chief financial officer for the entire missionary movement in that region. He found his place. But he had to walk through the valley to get there.
It's about trusting the initiator to also be the finisher.
Exactly. If he can hold the universe together, he can probably manage your career path. But you have to let him drive.
So if we zoom out and look at the whole picture today, we've seen Jesus as the image, the face of the invisible God, the firstborn, the rightful king, the glue, the actual physics of our existence.
The head of the body and the reconciler of the universe.
The takeaway for me is that we shouldn't shrink Jesus down. He isn't just a mascot for a religion. He's the logic behind reality itself.
And the fullness of the Godhead dwells in him. That's the phrase Colossians uses. If you have Jesus, you don't need a supplement. You don't need to add anything to him. He's the complete package.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought, based on those unfallen angels we talked about. The notes mention that these beings, who stood in the presence of God, who saw the galaxies being made, were absolutely silenced by the cross.
They couldn't believe what they were seeing, awed by it.
And here's the question. If the angels, who didn't even need saving, were that impacted by seeing their creator sacrifice himself, how much more should it impact us?
We're the ones in the cage.
Exactly. We're the ones who are bought. The angels watch the transaction. We are the transaction.
That's a sobering thought.
So as you go through your week, think about that cage door swinging open and remember who paid the $2. Thanks for diving in with us.
See you next time.